desert down to Mexico. I mean, they're going to play in Mexico next year. Really, the thing made total sense. And so I don't know why the Chargers could be blindsided because the Chargers move has got to be one of the maybe the weirdest move in sports history. Every relocation is a weird kind of thing, but a lot of times most of the time you get a team that's leaving their beloved fans and going to a new place where there hasn't been that sport there, and you've got a thirsty new fan base, and these LA moves have been really unique because obviously you got the Rams coming back home, where they still have kind of an aged, really thriving fan base that begged and pleaded for them to return, and we had all those stories. But the Chargers move, and I've said this repeatedly. I've said it on radio. I've said it on to anyone who will listen to me. The Chargers move doesn't is unique because they didn't go to some place where there wasn't football. They didn't go to some place where there wasn't another team. They didn't go to some place that was really looking to become big time. They went to Los Angeles, and they went just far enough away to piss everyone, their real fans off. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's
I don't get it.
crazy. It made no sense. And I
Vegas made
understand,
more sense. The Raiders made more sense in LA, but you had
total.
to you had to worry about the idea. It was the violent, that perception of a Raiders fan. You know what I mean? Like that, just the whole. I think that's really what it was. If you want my honest opinion, I think just the
To,
whole what.
no, to me, the Chargers thing was you get to a point where, a family, I mean, if you own an NFL team and you're playing at, the former Jack Murphy Stadium, Qualcomm Stadium, a stadium that if you're an NFL team, NFL owner, and you can't afford to build a state-of-the-art new stadium on your own money, you probably shouldn't own an NFL team anymore. That's
Dean
really the big
Spanos.
issue. That's really the big issue with the Chargers is that they're not, they're not owned by someone who can afford to own them anymore. Like if they, if the whole thing should not rest on public money in San Diego. Chargers fans should not be expected to convince their neighbors to pay for their stadium. Really they should have, and I don't know enough about, whether or not they could have found an owner who would have kept them in San Diego and built them a stadium. But really, that would have made the most sense because, it didn't make much. I mean, how much sense did it make to move them, a couple hours north into a soccer stadium, and then to somebody else's, stadium. So, to not own anyway. I mean, it's just
It was a joke.
it,
I
it
mean,
doesn't make any sense.
it's funny. I remember when we were out in Los Angeles, my father and I think they were building like a small soccer stadium, and my dad, like, we're around like all these Rams fans. My dad's like, "Oh, is that where the Chargers are gonna play?" It's just it's mind blowing, really. And then they get destroyed, by fan base, like with the Eagles who travel pretty well. But I mean, absolutely destroyed. What to the point? I mean, it was a Philadelphia Eagles, ninth home game of the year, and you're like sitting there and you're like, I kind of feel bad for Phillip Rivers. I kind of feel bad for Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram and hell, I kind of feel bad for the head coach there. So it's it's something else that, in my opinion, I think the Raiders made a lot more sense. But I'll tell you, at one point, it did look. I mean, seriously, at one point it did look like the Raiders were on top. It wasn't long ago. They were 12-4, and their whole world came crumbling down when Derek Carr got that injury right before the playoffs. And I felt like they had a hangover because that went into the next year, and they didn't make the playoffs. So, we'll see about that. But moving on, we have the NFL Supplemental Draft coming up in July, and I don't believe it's televised or anything like that, so no need to get all hyped like it's an actual NFL draft or anything like that. But I am a little hyped, Joe, because this is my bread and butter with the draft. The supplemental draft, I always get into whoever the prospect is. But this year there happened to be 3 prospects that I just really like. First, for those of you who don't know, Adonis Alexander. He is a 6'3" corner. I know everyone's mind just went to Richard Sherman, and I get that. He's the 6'3" corner that was really athletic and everything, and he's one of the best all time. I get it, but he's not quite there. As a matter of fact, he's actually kind of behind the learning curve, and the reason for that is because he actually wanted to go back to school this year. Decided to go back to Virginia Tech. And then he comes back, and he's all ready, and he's ruled academically ineligible. So he applies for the supplemental draft, and he gets his application accepted. So now he's in the supplemental draft. That's the first guy, and I like him as a 5th, 6th round, maybe 4th round tops supplemental pick. And for those of you who don't know, in the supplemental draft, if you select a guy, in the first round, you lose your first round pick next year. It's like essentially drafting early, and even though you're drafting late, the irony there. But teams have used a first round pick before. Now, it doesn't always work out, and I certainly wouldn't do it, but it's happened. The Rams, it's important to remember, don't have their second round pick due to the Marcus Peters trade. And the 7th round pick is up in the air, and the Rams would not be able to select anyone with the 7th round pick due to the fact that that whole trade with Alec Ogletree involved the Rams giving up a 2019 7th round, but it's a conditional, and that is only if due to undocumented or at least unreleased conditions in the Riley Dixon, the punter trade that they made from the Broncos. If they get that Broncos pick, the Rams get to keep their 7th round pick. So we won't know anything about that until next year. So therefore, the Rams cannot use their 7th round pick. So it's the 6th, it's the 5th, it's the 4th, the 3rd, and the 1st. There's not a first round supplemental pick, but there is a damn good player that's probably going to go 2nd or 3rd, and that is Sam Beal, the other corner, 6'1", about 190, out of Western Michigan. Very talented corner. He, unlike Adonis, who, in my opinion, is a project, although I think he would have been drafted pretty highly next year. Sam Beal can play right away, in my opinion. Watching the film on him, he's a 2nd, 3rd round player in this past draft. He is that talented. I think he can start right away, and that's why I would say I wouldn't be as high on him for the Rams, because I feel like they are good for now, but I feel like Adonis Alexander is a great option for the future. And then the third guy is Brandon Bryant out of Mississippi State. Safety, 200 pounds, 6 feet tall. He's a workout warrior. Guy runs a 4.24. He deadlifts 600 pounds. So he's not a guy that has anywhere near the production of Alexander or Beal, but he's the guy that is that workout warrior, has those crazy measurables, and allows you to kind of mold him into whatever you want him to be. With those types of athletic traits and that athletic profile, you could find something for him. So the reason I bring this up, Joe, is because of this. Rams have one cornerback signed through 2021, and that is Nickel Ruby-Coleman. They have 2 starters, but they're both going to be free agents very soon. Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters. Sam Shields is signed for 1 year. Kevin Peterson, who I like a lot, is a exclusive rights free agent, I believe, next year. So they can keep him, but you also have Troy Hill, who I believe he becomes a restricted free agent next year. And, then you have Torian Nixon and Dominic Hatfield. My point is that they're fine now. So I don't feel like they need Sam Beal. I like him a lot. And if the Rams got him, I'd be cool with it. Because I think he's ready to play right away. And I think he might, really put Sam Shields' position in jeopardy as the fourth corner. I think he's that good. But with Adonis Alexander, again, this is somebody you kind of draft and stash. We see it a lot in the NBA draft. You get those European players, and you draft and you stash them. How do you stash them? Well, they just play overseas until they want to come to the United States. It's a different type of thing there. But basically, Adonis Alexander, somebody that you kind of just, tuck away. Maybe you do what you did with Isaiah Battle, since the Rams made the last supplemental draft selection with Isaiah Battle. You give him a lot of practice squad money and make it to the point where no one would be able to take him off the practice squad. You could do stuff like that. I think Alexander makes sense, and I also think Brandon Bryant makes some sense. Rams lose Cody Davis. I think people are going to forget real quickly how big of a role he played last year. Had to start. LaMarcus Joyner did get hurt. Let's not forget about that. John Johnson dealt with some nicks here and there. So Cody Davis was a great guy to have as that third safety because Mo Alexander got cut. Now, you also have Marquis Christian, who I really like. I think he can replace that role. You have Blake Countess. You have Isaiah Johnson. Obviously, I like a lot of the UDFAs that they grabbed. You have
Parker.
Yeah, you have Parker. I don't know why his name escaped me. I mean, he was on the podcast, but Afolabi Laguda, I think his name, how his name is pronounced or whatever, from I believe Colorado, and then you have Chucky Williams, and I believe you have like Ramon Richards. I think is a corner, but you have guys out there. But so I think Brandon Bryant is definitely an option later. I think a 6th or a 7th, but the Rams couldn't offer a 7th, so it would be a 6th. So, what's your take on all that?
Well, I think, excuse me, I think it's a really, bold take by you, because when you brought it up to me, I was like, are you out of your mind? The last thing they need is another corner. I think partly the argument's kind of diffused by the expectation that Mark Spears is going to sign. And it's kind of you kind of don't expect him not to sign. I think if they feel like maybe they're not going to sign Peters, then maybe it's smart to go out and do something like this. Maybe this is a litmus test on how they feel about whether or not they're going to be able to retain him. But besides that, I mean, to me, they've been in a position where they've been trading away picks and trading away picks and trading away picks that it's kind of tough. I guess the pro for it would be, you grab another young player to kind of grow with this young core. But the other thing is that they have been spending. They didn't have a second rounder last year. They didn't have a first year before that. They're finally in a position where they've got the draft kind of full, and it would be tough for them to if they are giving up. And plus, it's going to be hard to make this team. I mean, they're going to be cutting guys. They're going to, especially from that secondary, that may make the team, make other teams. So you're adding to this depth. You're finding you got to find a place in this roster to stash this guy if it's a long-term play. So I think it's a really interesting call by you. Certainly you like these guys. You had a couple of them high up your draft board. So it's fascinating. I'd be surprised if they end up using a future pick on a guy who will be a future player for them. Why not just pick and have that, play out this season and make some of these decisions down the road. But, good call. We'll see if you've kind of opened Les's eyes a little bit if he makes this move.
Well, you also have to keep this in mind. With somebody like Adonis Alexander, I predicted, I mean, it was a way too early mock draft, 2019. But
Yeah.